We are a community divided. The Pokemon Company has asked the VGC community which format they enjoy the most. Regulation C, Regulation F, Regulation I, or other. And it's time to settle the score. It's time to determine the best format with two of the best players in VGC right here. I'm Joe Brown. This is our OHKO Debates, and we are here with Toler Webb and Justin Carris to decide the most important question. Maybe our votes matter. Maybe this conversation matters to Pokemon. What will our next format be? Toler, you are our first member here in this debate. You will be representing Regulation C today. How are you, sir?
I'm all right. I'm feeling, on fire right now, just like one of my favorite Pokemon from Regulation C, Chi-Yu. So I'm really, really hoping that I can go to bat for this format, which was almost as good as my favorite format from Scarlet and Violet.
Okay. All right. And Justin, you'll be representing Regulation F in this format. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling calm, collected, and ready to talk some trash about a really bad format.
All right. Well, you know what? It's getting heated, and we haven't even started our opening discussion yet. And everybody, completely ignore that I publicly endorsed Regulation F on social media. I'm going to be right down the middle in this.
You're not going to be
okay?
a Regulation I guy, Joe?
No, definitely not. Definitely not taking Regulation I's opinion on this. So I'm going to play it right down the middle. I'm going to give both of them their points and everything like that. So let's get started. Toler, we're going to start with your opening arguments, opening statements, whatever you want to say about Regulation C.
Yeah, I just want to say that, I think both formats are fine. I'm going to reference this sometimes, but I want a regional Regulation F. I have a pretty established understanding of that metagame. I get how it works. I helped build some Arch Rain teams that eventually, those were parts of the format later on. Like, I have a lot of investment in Regulation F. That said, I hate Regulation F. Regulation F is a format that's not that fun to play. And this is despite the fact that it's relatively diverse. What's the problem here? We have two big problems. One, Raging Bolt. Why is Raging Bolt a problem? Well, Raging Bolt is one of the best answers to the other problem with this format, a holdover from Regulation E, Tornadus and Urshifu. Raging Bolt is the best answer to these two, and because they're so good, Raging Bolt is also very good. And guess what? Neither is fun to play against. Tornadus and Urshifu, they're going to click Tailwind and make Surging Strikes, and you're not really going to get to interact. And Raging Bolt is going to get Claw Mind and Protect, and it's pretty boring. Why is Regulation C better than those things? Okay, haters are going to tell you that Flutter Mane is overused, that Tinglu and Gyarados have defensive synergy that's way too hard to break, that the format is just kind of boring and slow sometimes. And you know what? I'm not going to disagree. It is boring and slow sometimes, but the strategies that are interesting in Regulation C are very interesting, and the power level of the format isn't so huge that it prevents you from using Pokemon that are cool strategies that aren't just either balance or hyper offense. You have a broad variety of different strategies you can execute, and also it's very close to Regulation B, and Regulation B was just great because we had the centralizing presence from the paradoxes, keeping the weird stuff from taking too much charge, and then we still had the cool diversity that Scarlet and Violet decks offers. So that's my opening statement, Mr. Joe. I hope you liked it. Justin's about to bring me a new one.
Hey, you're starting off strong, but listen, Justin is a wordsmith, so the floor is yours, Mr. Carris.
So I legitimately, I strongly believe that one of the best formats ever made, and balance, it's what I refer to as like a Goldilocks format, is Regulation B. And it's crazy that people say that it's so similar to Regulation C, because I feel like it's almost on paper, in practice, and in its ethos entirely different from Regulation C. And that's only by adding 3 Pokemon. Wo-Chien doesn't even really count. So I'll go into at a time in the future, like the reasoning that I don't necessarily like the ruined Pokemon when they're the only additions to a good format. But the fact that the format warped so much around basically 3 Pokemon, I don't love that those 3 Pokemon had that type of impact on an already like pretty good, well-balanced format. The reason that I'm favored towards something like Regulation F, and I really won't counter the things that Toler said, you'll never find me being the guy that justifies Urshifu. I think Urshifu is one of the most broken Pokemon ever created. But the fact that we're all kind of in agreement that Raging Bolt is something that really counters it, and counters also one of Urshifu's best partners too, being Tornadus, that's a good thing. Like the fact that we have a Pokemon that's so powerful that it's able to answer something as broken as Urshifu Torn is awesome. And I don't necessarily feel like it's unfun to play against, but again, we can dismantle that later. The things that I love about Regulation F are that even though there are so many powerful broken tools in the format, you have Blood Moon Ursaluna for Regiroth compositions, you have Setup Goldengo, there was King Gambit and the Gouging Fire strategies. There's like balance comps where you have Jungle, Vortex with Fake Out, Incin, Rillaboom, Urshi, Raging Bolt, which is like the core balance of everything. But then you still have kind of all of the auxiliary pieces where it's just you can go like a fast Torn Ursh, Harkonine team. You can go like a slower Trick Room comp, P2 Ursa, hard Trick Room like Ben Grismer by the end of the format with Orlando. People were getting into new ideas like Corviknight, as we saw too with Brock's team at Orlando at that same event. I felt like Regulation F was just getting into its stride by the time that we had to kind of like cut it short. And I felt like a lot of the sentiment around the Raging Bolt problems was like contrived into that little like 1 month period where everybody was just terrified of figuring out what to do in a really stressful important tournament, and a lot of people also just gave up because then they could move on to the next format at that time, which was Regulation G. As soon as people were excited to use restricteds, they did. So Regulation C is like also kind of just something that I want to make this point now. It's one of the only regulations where we've had 2 internationals with that format. And we debatably almost had 2 internationals and a Worlds with it before everything hit the fan. And we got Regulation D at Worlds for, kind of like that splash in the pan format. All of the strengths really for Regulation F, I can go really, really heavily into. I just feel like it's a very, there's a turbocharged like Street Fighter game that people like refer to as like a mess of everything being broken. And I feel like that's kind of the other close to like a Goldilocks zone where as long as everything is just so crazy, it kind of balances itself out. Like I never felt like I was lacking tools using any particular archetype. And I never felt like the strongest, most centralizing pieces, the Raging Bolt, the Urshifu, Rillaboom, Incin, that they were really drawing away from all of the fun stuff. Like there were so many other options that we had. Choice Band, Inner Focus, Entei was pretty strong. There was a time when you could use some of the other new paradoxes like Iron Crown, one of my favorites. We still saw like Murkrow and Proto Spam Sun teams exist at times. The dark version of Urshifu was still pretty strong. We saw a lot of diversity in what really succeeded. And I felt like there was also a lot of different brands of Pokemon that you could play in that format. Whereas in Regulation C, a lot of the pieces are really redundant. Chi-Yu and Flutter, obviously they work together really well. But the redundancy in how they play is a little bit obnoxious. And I'll go into that in a minute when we get to the Ruin stuff.
All right, these are strong opening statements from our 2 regulation representatives here. So let's get into the discussion now. Let's get the back and forth going. Let's get into the debate. Our first question, we're going to start with Toler here on this one. What makes a good format for VGC? We've been playing for so long. You've been playing for so long. You've been able to, you can make a tier list of every format you've ever played over all of the years and your favorites and your least favorites. What goes into a good VGC format, and how does that relate to Regulation C or F for when Justin talks?
Yeah, I think this is a pretty nuanced question and a difficult one to answer in short form. I mean, come on, we've had debates about what makes a good format since the dawn of time, effectively. Like Smogon people are like, is diversity good? Is centralization good? Where's the right happy medium? Should we have powerful stuff? Should we have weak stuff? It's kind of interesting to even just like think about the philosophy of these sorts of questions. But that preamble aside, I'm pretty strongly of the opinion that diversity for diversity's sake, for example, is not good. That's what makes Regulation H such an annoying format to play. Just to reference where we are right now, right?
Definitely an agreement there.
It was also actually the same with Regulation I. I know I'm one of the few people that has this hot take, I guess, but like Regulation I played 8 different restricted duos at Worlds, and one of them had Groudon. That's a format where there's an incredibly broad variety of matchups that you can fight that makes it very hard to be competitive in the format. You can't really express your skill at beating the top teams of the format when you can't even be sure that you'll actually play any of the top teams in the format. So I want to make that point pretty clearly, because one thing that people talk about is, well, Flutter main is way overused in Regulation C. But I'm not going to lie to y'all. When Regulation C was around, no one was complaining about Flutter main that was actually like good and playing well at the game and like threatening to top cut tournaments. That's because Flutter main is a Pokemon that can be used in a diverse range of ways. Flutter main is a Pokemon that doesn't necessarily counter itself, but there's interesting play with Shadow Ball versus Terra versus not Terra versus being bulky enough to take it versus not being bulky enough to take it. It interacts really interestingly with speed control. It's vulnerable to priority. Like Flutter main has natural counterplay, but is also just a very reliable special sweeper. And instead of being oppressive and overpowering, although it was the best special sweeper in the format, thanks to its speed and incredible stats, it still felt like a Pokemon that you could play and have counterplay for very reasonably. I think, so one thing that I think actually makes the format bad or uninteresting or not fun is the play patterns in the format not being fun. So for Regulation C, a great example of an unhealthy play pattern or a not fun play pattern is Ting Gyarados. Thunderwave is not fun to play against. You don't get to actually strategize. You're not rewarded for being good at the game. You're just rewarded for being good at playing the odds and knowing the right times to flip coins. That's also, for Regulation F, something I don't like about Raging Bolt. It's a Pokemon that, you're playing a lot of guessing games with Protect and Calm Mind. But at the end of the day, whether you get hit by Thunderclap or not, sometimes it's not a guarantee. You're guessing whether they actually do it or don't. Now, as Justin says, Raging Bolt is a really small portion of the format. But I think making a comparison like Flutter main to Raging Bolt, and I promise I won't make everything about Regulation F about Raging Bolt, Flutter main to Raging Bolt, is a little bit disingenuous, because Flutter main is, as people would say in a shorthand, like a very honest Pokemon. You know exactly what it's doing. When you see it on the sheet, you're like, that's either speed boost or special attack boost. If it has Ice Wind, probably speed. Raging Bolt is also honest, but T-Clap is not a fun move to play against when they're building their entire strategy around it. Especially given that we're waiting so long for grassy terrain to happen, for Protect to happen. They're cycling Fake Out. You're constantly getting denied the opportunity to attack, much the same way that Thunderwave is happening. The nice thing about Regulation F, of course, is that there are other strategies that are more powerful than Raging Bolt or comparable. Terra Fairy, indeed, female, famous example, can't even touch that unless you have Thunderbolt. But I want to be like pretty explicit, right? Like the things that are toxic about Regulation C are like Ting Gyarados, Chi Flutter, as Justin's saying, Pow D-Knight. These are all things that are generating coin flippy board states, that are kind of answer it or die kind of strategies that give the opponent way too much room to trick you. But the things that are really honest about Regulation C are kind of sick, like Dragapult late in the format, the Rain teams with Palafin late in the format, while still very balancy and super interesting interactions with Jet Punch. You could set up your Palafin and get going. Woo. Arcanine was powerful, and I think Arcanine is a more fun Pokemon to play against an Incineroar because they don't get both an Incineroar, a Fake Out, and an Intimidate at the same time when they switch in, which is kind of just insane value, and you don't have Parting Shot. So you have to play a lot more honestly with Arcanine as well. So I think some of the most powerful staple pieces of the format were more fun to play against, and you could do some pretty wacky wacky stuff because of that.
Timestamp it. Let's go. We're gonna edit that one out.
Yeah. Points deduced for swearing.
No. But you could do wacky stuff. For example, I played a SO team pretty late in the format with Choice Band Tinglu, and man, maybe it's just my nostalgia for that team coming back, and it did struggle with Tinglu and Gyarados. But you can do some really cool stuff and manipulate field effects in interesting ways when you're not pinned down by Incineroar and Rillaboom. Of course, you have to wonder if they brought Regulation C back, would Incineroar and Rillaboom stay where they are for it? And in that case, I don't know how I feel about it. But as it was, I think it's more fun to play without them, and I'd really like to end Scarlet Violet on a format that didn't include the fake out duo.
I'm really glad that you brought up the point of the honest pieces in the format being fun, because that's something that you've activated my trap card.
Aha! I've lost the debate.
Before I go into really what makes a format good, I think that is actually something that gives a lot of people, nostalgia goggles when they're thinking back on like how the gameplay loops of every turn and a really competitive set go for regulation, is like, oh, when the honest stuff was happening, oh man, that format felt great. Whereas I'm of the opinion that when the honest stuff is the most consistent and powerful, viable Pokemon, that is actually usually that is typically what will give you some of the best gameplay, and make the format good. That's why I will use Regulation B and kind of A in a way for to explain that. Basically, in Regulation B, right, and this is just because I'm so intimately familiar with what the strongest pieces were. Fluttermane, Great Tusk, Goldengo, Talonflame, Mouse Ape existed, Mouse Dango existed, Mouse D-Knight existed. These are all Pokemon that do not have moves really that miss, or have crazy secondary effects. So one of the things that I hate about Regulation H is I have to deal with Dire Claw as just a random activating assist trophy in a match. I lose because something went to sleep. It's just so fast you can't ever answer Dire Claw in a lot of board states. So it's almost just this constant looming threat. In Regulation B, Palafin doesn't have anything dishonest about it. I think Palafin is one of the most honest Pokemon ever designed, actually. Maybe too honest, because as you see, as soon as something even remotely stronger comes along, it disappears. It's hard to argue around not using Urshifu. But Gyarados took over so much of Palafin's real estate when Regulation C happened, because it's like Palafin isn't what's going to break the format for you. Gyarados is going to literally glue your team together. Palafin is not going to board wipe them in response. So the honest stuff being really, really powerful in Regulation B, the Arcanine, Great Tusk. I mean, even King Gambit, not necessarily one of my favorite examples, but it doesn't have a lot of secondary effects because it's slow. It's not flinching you first with Iron Head. Sucker Punch, sure, can be a little bit high variance, but also that creates really hype stuff to watch. I mean, we all remember a really fun Thunderclap or Sucker Punch wars to watch. But yeah, I think some of the honest stuff being strong, I can remember very vividly one of my favorite times in a format I hated was when I was enjoying the honest gameplay of Kartana and Tapu Fini and Tapu Koko back in 2017. But I hate that format, and I do not look back on it fondly at all, because once again, restrictive team building on the fact that you have to use one of the Tapus, not a fan of that. And then two, the honest stuff wasn't necessarily the stuff you were playing the most. Double Duck, Lily Cole, Eevee, and there's other issues that I have with that format, but it always felt like I was fighting so hard to make my team not lose to the really volatile, unfun strategies, that I couldn't ever just straightforward play a fake PG team, my Fini, Arcanine teams. And I literally had to warp my game style around that, because the only way I could find comfort in a format like that was by using P2 Gigalith. And it wasn't, sure, a lot of people use that, but in order for me to really find a way around the Double Duck and the Lily Cole and all that, it's I had to adapt what I even really enjoyed using. And that kind of held me back at times, because I felt like I was never really exploring the best tools in that format that might fit my style. I eventually fell in love with the Z move circuitry with Substitute. But I never even really touched that, because I'm well, I'm not going to use this into Lily Cole and Double Duck. So in Regulation C, the honest things, I agree. I 100% and I'm agreement with you. Iron Hands is an honest Pokemon. It's incredibly strong. Fluttermane is still an honest Pokemon. But what made some stuff really dishonest was being able to keep a Chi-Yu in the back and then have a booster Flutter. at like on the board at whenever you want to just like Terra Fairy, swap in Chi Yu, and then go for a ridiculously strong Moonblast into 70-80% HP Pokemon that are just not going to be able to take it. So you had a support Pokemon on the field that also had a crazy amount of bulk at times. That was the fastest thing in the format. And then it was just throwing out, well, fastest viable thing in the format. People use Bundle, but I would say Flutter was the most common super, super fast piece. And it just didn't have the most honest gameplay. We went from like almost everybody using Booster Energy, Special Attack Booster, or Specs Flutter Main in Regulation B to the primary item on Flutter Main being Booster Energy speed boosting because of the existence of Chi Yu. And that drastically warped the metagame around it. Like that whole concept of your fastest Pokemon and your fastest special attack in the format going up basically 100 speed points is crazy. And the fact that you have to now deal with a partner that covers so much of what we were using to beat Fluttermane, like Amoonguss. Amoonguss was one of the most reliable answers to deal with Fluttermane, and you add Chi Yu into the mix. Now, the reason that Rain is one of the more popular archetypes to combat something like that is because of you have to deal with Chi Yu. In order for Amoonguss to really be able to properly counter Fluttermane, we have to be able to use Pelipper to protect it. And so all of these machinations in the format and the metagaming, like these small little things might seem like, we don't have to deal with too much toxic gameplay, but sometimes it's as simple as that. It's as simple as, Fluttermane's most common item going to Booster Energy and their most common set being Speed Booster really makes things weird. Now there's these super, super bulky teams with Tinglu and Gyarados, and there's these opposite end of the spectrum, super aggressive teams where like they're leading Ghost Chi Yu with Booster Speed Fluttermane. It's like now my whole team needs to be able to survive a double up from these. And almost nothing in the format really does that without the support of Tinglu or Assault Vest and Terrestrialization. So what really made Regulation C difficult to me was like it felt like this gigantic game of chicken on when you click Terra, when you force your opponent to Terra, and the reduction of game plans and win conditions to that for some people was really, really fun. And when you remove the pieces that kind of did that, yes, I agree. It was an honest and very fun format because now we're playing Regulation B.
Toler, I will allow a quick response.
Oh, I mean, I don't really have much to say on that. I mean, like, I'm with Justin here on a lot of this. Pow Knight, I think I know people that will say Pow Knight was the best. For example, Chupacross top 8'd in AIC with Pow Knight. I also know more people that in coaching sessions that I've had or in mentoring sessions or when I've been team building with people, they see Pow Knight across the way and they ugh, because it's just like where are the single target attacks going? I think Chen Pao, Justin didn't even cover this. I'm digging my own grave here, but like Chen Pao is another example of Pokemon that really gives makes honest gameplay hard to come by because you're just playing the single target game of, well, you're going to KO something and you're going to KO it before it moves. So what are we going to do? The only thing I'll really say is I think that while the Ruin abilities didn't interact like super well with the format, and as Justin's saying, I mean, they're generating a lot of unhealthy board states, there's also a lot of good that came out of these sorts of features. And I really think about the top 32. I'm looking at it now from 2023 NAIC. That tournament was really hard for me personally, but there's just this huge variety of teams, and it really wasn't just all Gyarados or all Chi Flutter or all Pow Knight. We have everything from Dozogiri to Mouse Golden Go and Talonflame to Orthworm. There are several Orthworms in top 32 of this format.
Mouse Ape, Talonflame. Don't try to
not just Mouse Ape. No, Siddharth Singal is top 32 here at the 10-4 on Great Tusk Talonflame bundle. There's the James Beck team from back in the day. Joe's on his Classic Sun. Like, there's a variety of stuff that doesn't interact in these sorts of unhealthy ways where you're just trying to abuse a Ruin ability to either make it impossible to get a KO or make it impossible to avoid getting KO'd. So I think the format had more to give there. I'd really be curious to see how Justin is going to justify that Regulation F is a good format in a different way than Regulation or is better than Regulation C given the standards that he's placed on Regulation C.
Hey, man, we'll get there. I think we will get there.
All right. So let's move on to our next question here, our topic of discussion. We'll try to have more concise answers per question because we are under time constraints here. So Obviously, it's not VGC's not just all about the players. If it was, then people could just choose rule sets for their favorite Pokemon or their favorite type of archetypes and defend it. Some of the other aspects of VGC and our format of choice is the viewership. We need people watching. We need those eyeballs on the screen to watch all of our great players in this game and their sick highlights and sick predictions and awesome gameplay that VGC has. So, which format is better from a viewership perspective? Justin, we'll start with you.
I think one of the most defining things that makes spectatorship like a favorable opinion on like good spectator experience is diversity. So I think just like outright Regulation F just wins there, even if it's not good diversity. So Toler made the very astute point that too broad is not necessarily diversity and variety is not necessarily an inherently good thing where a format's concerned. But I do believe that like the further you go down the base stat list and like the more thinned out the usage rates are, the better. And no matter what, like even if I think that even if I enjoyed watching Regulation C gameplay more, and in a lot of cases I will say I actually did as a like very, very competitive player. I think that on the whole, players watching the gameplay loops of 100 really cool, viable Pokemon and them being interchanged frequently is usually better. The only other like large factor is how frustrating those types of games are to watch and how much things centralize around the unfun stuff. So to that point, I always make the joke about the European tournaments being like, football Sunday after a plate of wings. I fall asleep most of the time watching a lot of their games. It's a lot of game threes. It's a lot of very, very safe repositioning. That's fine in some cases. But sometimes it's a snooze fest. And I feel like it happens a lot more often in Europe because like they just have this preference towards more well-rounded teams. That's fine. I think that that's cool in some ways. I think that it's different that they have their own little metagame, but from a spectator experience, like I really got to say, I'm not looking to European streams to be like, why are they doing really crazy things in these weird scenarios? I'm watching a lot of European gameplay of Amoonguss, Palafin, Arcanine, and I'm just watching them swap back in and out. And it's more like I'm tracking what they're doing habit wise and like how they're downloading their opponent's ideas and maybe game planning between, best of 1, best of 2, best of 3, game 1, 2, 3. But for the spectator, if the only thing they're watching is a Raging Bolt, like Calm Mind, Instant Swap in repeatedly, and then the game, like, really Rillaboom heavy, leftovers heavy formats are bad in my experience because they take so long. Those are like valuable tools when you're like trying to think and like give yourself as much time as you can to game plan what you're going to do to beat your opponent. But if the gameplay loop is the same thing over and over, that's not an advantage for people to be like, well, we're talking through all of these turns. I'm thinking through all of these things. The people in the audience are not, going crazy over stuff like that. Conversely, I think Urshifu, and at some points is like, it's just deleting things on the board. So like, it kind of forces people to do things positioning wise. And then watching like a Terra, battle where they rip the Terra Stellar, they rip the Terra Water, and then Urshifu just carves the opponent's team up. Maybe that's fun to watch on a spectator standpoint. But yeah, I can't imagine that the large revolving door of Pokemon is ever really good for the game. And I feel like that happened much, much more in Regulation C.
Toler, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. It's definitely true in Regulation C that the power that Amoonguss had, as well as, the power that Tinglu has to come on and off the board, Pollen Puffs, Intimidates, had the potential to generate stalled board states where we're just waiting a lot of the time. But if I'm really going to dig down on what Justin just said, the things that waste a lot of viewer time, that are just like dead air that the casters have to fill, are end-of-turn field effects. Grassy terrain didn't exist in the original Regulation C. So that's actually pretty important because grassy terrain makes you play a leftovers animation for every Pokemon that's grounded.
True.
No one
Do
likes
we think
watching
that do we think that extended the games more than the overall sum of pollen puffs that went off in
That's the big
regulation?
question. That's the big question.
Because
Like,
that's
how many
what
times did we switch in and click puff on our Chiyu before setting up another plot, before switching back out, because the position's not quite good enough? It's a good
Jarvis
question.
analyze.
Yeah, Jarvis analyze indeed. I think Regulation C, because it was a lower power format, definitely had the potential to generate more defensive board states. We had a lot less explosive Pokemon. And from a builder,
I disagree. It wasn't that. It was the wealth gap. It wasn't the it wasn't that there wasn't a lot of offensive power in Regulation C. It was that it was all concentrated towards the top.
Towards the ruins, you're saying.
Yeah, there was a much more even distribution of like you can do all these powerful things in Regulation F. I think that works to Regulation F's advantage. It felt very redundant in Regulation C.
Hey man, I get that. Is it like whenever you play offense, you have to play a ruined Pokemon and be using like Beat or Sword?
Yeah, and again, too, like for a spectator thing, one of the fun things about watching like as a competitor when you really know ball is like, oh, that spread did this because they were faster at this point in Tailwind. All of those things, I feel like those really get lost in translation for spectators. Like we're not looking saying, oh, that's definitely gonna be a bulky Gyarados. They knew that, and then they game planned around it, or they knew that the Ting-Lu swap in was coming there. So I think that like a lot of that happens more in Regulation C, especially if less pieces. Things are centralized a little bit more around the most important Pokemon. It's kind of like in basketball where people watch and they'll be like, the 3-point ruin basketball. Like all these kids are doing are chucking
just
up.
Sit back, wait,
hurry.
Just take a chance.
Like people that really, really love basketball, we're watching and we're like, yo, all these players are so smart. They're doing all these really cool things.
Such good
without the ball. They have
Yeah.
really cool team scheme defenses. And you can really tell when people aren't doing things correctly. And the same thing kind of applies to football. You know, in Regulation F, I feel like, it's like, man, they're just chucking up threes. They're clicking terrestrialization and going for surging strikes. But in Regulation C, you know, I actually feel like the allegory maybe goes there more. It's like, you know, you aren't seeing all the really advanced tactics happening kind of underneath the team sheet.
I like, you know, my thing with Regulation C, to the points that you're making, I mean, in concordance, you know, the slower pace of the format on average, although I do think, as I've said, I mean, the offensive parts of the format with the ruined Pokemon, they accelerate the game in an unhealthy way, right? Like, you get free Life Orb on all of your attacks, just no payment offered on good Pokemon with good typing and so forth. The thing is when you're not worrying about those, the slower pace of Regulation C as a format gives a lot of room for interesting things to happen to break the stalemates. And when interesting things happen that break the stalemate, and you have a caster right there saying, "Oh my God, how did he know?" You know, that's hype. Regulation C generates those hype moments in that way. Regulation F, it's like, Urshifu, you know, it's going to Terra Water. It's going to Surging Strikes. And the caster could call the game before it even happens. They just don't because they're polite. I will say, I'm looking back at this UIC standings, and I'm remembering Aurelian Sula's team from Regulation F. And man, I think watching that team play was insane with the Booster Flutter, the Dark Urshifu, the Landorus with the Life Orb, Miracle Seed Rillaboom. I mean, it was just all gas all the time, reads every single turn. A lot of what James Evans was doing in Regulation F was the same. And as a player, I can't stand those kinds of teams, but I got to hand it to Regulation F. Even if Regulation C gives these interesting moments where the tension breaks and everything explodes all at once, and then it's like, oh my gosh, the Arcanine is gone. What do we do? Man, some of those teams in Regulation F, the way that they could manipulate the high power of the individual Pokemon, take these huge damage calcs that no one expects to be one-shots. I mean, I got to hand it to it. I mean, Regulation F being a higher power format that's faster paced on average really gives it that advantage.
Well, I would say I have a follow-up question for each of you too. So I'll start with Justin here on Regulation C. You say, it revolves around the ruined Pokemon, but people love legendaries, Justin. People love the ruined Pokemon. People love the paradox Pokemon. They think Flutter Main's sick. We're talking about viewership, right? Like they did the raids to get their Flutter Maid or whatever, the 6-star Terra raid. Everybody loved the shiny ruinous Pokemon that we all just got, right? So people would love to use their shiny Ting-Lu in Regulation C. Are you here going to deny the people what they want of shiny ruined Pokemon that also click Fissure, another entertaining viewership aspect of regulation.
Joe, we are done with the propaganda. Okay.
No more Fissure, please.
While we were in the middle of the vote, there were some disingenuous things that I would gladly have tweeted and retweeted. However, now that we are back into logical, our votes have been cast. The Fissure Ting Lu discussion, they already made this point. I just didn't want to agree with it because of the Red Sea apologists, but yeah, Fissure Ting Lu died instantly. It was gone after like the first month or two. It's a meme. It's very much a meme. We were worried that it was going to be too good, but part of why we thought it was going to be too good is because like defense leaned so hard in one direction to kind of counter all the offense. And because you were able, to, you could have these like really, really strong defensive backbones in Regulation C, which I like. I actually do like. I think most VGC players are cool with that. Not necessarily great for spectators, not necessarily great for the fans. And that's kind of like the paradoxical like piece of it. These really good core tenets of fun, clever VGC gameplay may not necessarily lend to the spectatorship experience. However, the point that you were making, Toler, about the gas and all of that, it did feel very much like the way that Terra interacted with that format was like very much a game of chicken, and that necessarily, that, and also the ruin abilities. Let me make this point really quickly. Now, I promise this won't take more than 60 seconds, but the ruin abilities are terrible for spectating because I'm a competitor.
It's not clear.
And I don't know half of my damage calcs how they change with the ruination abilities because it's like so many small nuances. If I have my ruin on the field, you have yours. This is immune to the ruin ability. This has an assault vest, so is it modified by the ruin after the special defense drop? Intimidate, it gets factored in. Thank God that Wo-Chan is the worst one because Intimidate and Sword of Ruin, yeah, that's terrible. I wouldn't even be able to think about it. I'd just be like, okay, I do 0 damage. And on the special side, like it's kind of cool to be like, okay, I know at these thresholds, I'm going to get knocked out by this Flutter Mane Moonblast. I live this, so if Chi is on the field, I don't, right? Like I live with 5% or whatever. The ruination abilities, like the modifiers to them, and because they affect everything on the field, and it's not like a one-time thing, it's always active. It's modifying like 10 to 20 different calculations or theoretical calculations on top of that per turn.
Switch in and out.
So it makes it a lot harder to think like through what the right play is, or to call out what's actually happening in some cases, like, as a commentator, as a spectator sitting in the stands trying to tell your friend what's happening that's getting into VGC. Well, I'm actually not sure how much this heat wave is going to do to this Iron Hands if it Terras and Ting Lu swaps in. You know what I mean? Like that stuff I think is kind of bad. And because Regulation F is like much more straightforward in that way, very often what things are going to go down. No, it's not a lot of Ting Lu, not a lot of Wo-Chien, definitely not a lot of Wo-Chien in that format. You're not really seeing those commonplace damage modifiers. And I think on the defensive end, it's actually more important because offensively, it's like, okay, most of the time people are either swinging for knockouts or swinging to put something into range as they're supposed to. So like the offensive modifiers are a lot more straightforward. Like, yep, this is going to get knocked out here. Whereas the defensive modifiers is like, well, this might completely change my targeting or whether or not I need to Terra here or if I'm going to get reversal by something like a Ting Lu with and a Flutter Mane.
Now, Toler, you're defending the viewership of Live Regulation C is so fun. I seem to remember an Articuno winning a regional in Regulation F. I seem to remember some Raging Bolt thunderclap mind games between Chuppa and Alex Underhill, but from a commentary viewership perspective, really fun seeing that back and forth. A 2 HP Raging Bolt coming back to full health and winning a game for Brady.
Are you there was some pretty
Listen, hey, I went after Justin. He was going after the shiny ruins. I'm going after both of you.
Feels more like, less
So
substantive.
are you saying that viewers would prefer not to see Articuno win a regional? Is that what your statement is?
Well, okay. Just to be clear, right? Obama Snow is viable in Regulation C, so I will not hear any further detraction.
I'm just going to name some of the sets that we watched in Regulation F. I'm so sorry to cut you off, but do we not remember Wolf versus Nicholas Donnelly in 2024? Do we not remember Wolf versus Neil Patel, how crazy that set was towards the end?
Yeah, Wolf had a few gimmies in that tournament, and that was one of them.
I'm like just looking through, and then Underhill versus Chuppa was really good. At Portland and Dortmund, who cares?
Mm-hmm.
Utrecht was the Articuno. I didn't necessarily love that one, but Aurelian's team was actually really cool, and Aurelian's matchups were really fun to watch. I can't really think too much of like a lot of Regulation C sets that like stand out to me. Maybe you will remember some.
Yeah, I think the fact that it's been an additional year is a big limitation. I mean, because I try to keep recent stuff in memory.
True, that's disingenuous. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, it's fine. I'm getting beaten down here. No. I think, okay, this is my thing, right? I get that people like Thunderclap mind games. I get that the heroic comeback story of Raging Bolt is exciting. And I think there are lots of games in Regulation F that are exciting in that way, that are important games and that are fun to watch. I want to push back a little bit, though, right? Thunderclap mind games are not fun as a player. It's out of your hands as a player when you're playing those. You're playing the guessing game. You have some rule that you made up in your head. Like, I'm going to flip a coin at a random time. I'm going to look at my watch and see what number it is, and then I'm going to decide that's the sucker punch I'm going to dip out on, which I know is actually a rule that some people use, or I'm just going to click sucker punch 8 times in a row, or Thunderclap 8 times in a row, or what have you. I think, even if those are fun to watch, they're not interactions that lead to true competitive integrity within the Pokemon. And so if I have to sacrifice a little bit of thrill from some guessing games in some parts, or if I have to sacrifice a little bit of excitement from Raging Bolt recovering HP for the 47th time in the same game, as the timer ticks down to 0 and they lock in the move just in time, and oh my god, it's Thunderclap! If I have to give up that extra 20 minutes that I'm going to spend watching the same Pokemon just click Protect over and over again, I'm not going to mind it. I mean, those things are exciting. But you know what? I think Regulation C had great gameplay integrity. I think some of my favorites as a Regulation C, unfortunately, were not streamed. Like, I think about Wolf versus, well, I don't think this person plays very much anymore, but Wolf versus Zach Thornburg at NAIC that year was a really cool set to watch. I think of Justin Knox's sets from NAIC and Regulation C. Those were exciting as well. I think of Colin, that was Reg B. But Reg B is kind of close to Reg C. I was thinking Colin versus Eric Rios at OCIC. Some of the Rain team performances in Reg C were pretty sick. Watching Palafin, its geriatric legs as it's already on its way out because of Gyarados, find its footing once again in the format.
Justin Tang's Dragon Bolt team.
Justin Tang's Dragon Bolt team early on in Regulation C.
I'm in the middle.
Yeah. I mean, there were some really sick things that were able to happen in Regulation C.
I preferred his Reg B team.
Yeah.
Even as a victim of it.
Dude, I mean, like, as you're saying, for the viewers, it's kind of a nuanced thing that Justin's saying about the game of chicken with Terra, but it's kind of true. Justin Tang got those 2 regional championships for being the kind of player who is willing to hold Terra forever. You were sitting like, when is Justin Tang going to Terra? And like, he was one of the only players who had just Nerves of Steel. He was like, no, they know I'm going to Terra, so I'm just not going to do it. People took that part of his playstyle, by the way. People that don't know, it's a fun fact. People are like, oh, wow, okay, maybe I should hold on to Terra more often too. There were some really exciting teams that came out of C because of the space it gave. I won't knock Regulation F too hard. I have a personal favorite set from Regulation F. Maybe you can guess. It involves Golden Go, my favorite Pokemon to play with, which was hard to play in Regulation C because of Chiyu, and Urshifu beating down Tinglu and Chiyu is important.
Did it involve another player from Jersey that played for a Spanish team?
That set was also one of my favorites.
I thought that was it. I thought it was Luca.
Yeah, Luca. Yeah. I mean, I like the outcome of the James Evans set a little bit more, but the Luca Paz set I was really proud of. Which was also hyped because I clicked Terra Cudgel into a Raging Bolt turn 1. It's like, you don't even know why he's doing it. Okay, but my regional win aside, like Regulation F had some sick stuff, but I love the space that Regulation C gave to players, despite all of its flaws. And realistically, if I could pick, I'd pick Regulation B again. I think the biggest problem with Regulation C...
Oh my gosh.
I think the biggest problem with Regulation C is how they would even bring it back, right? Like, what does this look like? We're bringing four
so
ruins.
That's the question. That's what our next topic of discussion is. So let's talk about innovation. Nobody wants to do the same thing over and over again. Let's say your regulation wins, but with a twist. What twist would you include to either improve, to change, just to have a little bit of a different dynamic if we brought, Regulation C 2.0, Regulation F 2.0? Obviously, C's in a weird spot. There was no DLC, so there's no Ogre Pond, there's no, Raging Bolt. Do those Pokemon come into Regulation C? How does that affect their format? And, say on Justin's side for Regulation F, maybe there's things they can add, there's things they can take away. What twist would you like to see for your regulation to the second time around?
I think that so Toler and I, we actually have been talking about this in private, and I've been thinking of doing like a test on it. Like actually, as soon as we saw the poll, because I don't know that if we're going to add anything, like if we're going to have an additive version of a format, like Reg C plus X. Reg C would be hard to pull off if we were going to go back to it, because you have like so many TMs that you have to get rid of. Like there's a lot of Dex stuff that you have to not cover.
We can return to.
It would also feel really difficult to kind of build for, because it's not like intuitive to say these are the only Pokemon that you can use, right? Like you have to cut so much of the Dex. Like looking at the actual Paldean Pokédex and be like, oh, I guess this is the only thing I can do, is probably like the only viable way of doing that. We probably have to make some tools to help people. Again, it's probably just simpler to do a Reg C, a Reg B, or a Reg H plus. And the way that I've been thinking about it is like, all right, I think in terms of easiest execution, the simplest thing is you say, we have Regulation H right now. These are the things that are banned. We only add X thing in. Give us the paradoxes back. That could be one. Give us the ruin Pokemon and the paradoxes back. Or I don't think it would make sense to do just the ruins, not the paradoxes. And then we have Ogre Ponds, the Loyal 3. Who cares about the Loyal 3? They never really have any space to do anything.
Sorry, Justin. I have 100% win rate on the official stream with Pheasantipity. So
true.
I do think this is a real take. I do think because of how good Okidogi is against Rilla and Sen, if we just like lifted Regulation H and dumped Okidogi in it, we'd probably see a pretty reasonable amount of play.
Take notes, Pokemon. If you want to sell some more DLC, like make Okidogi shine. I think that giving the Loyal 3 a chance, and then giving the like some of the other DLC Pokemon actually like a chance to shine. Like we've seen Sinistra in a format where it doesn't have to deal with Urshifu. However, or not Urshifu.
It's really great in Urshifu. Yeah.
Chiyu. But we have seen the opposite. We've seen Sinistra in a format where it's legal. It's so funny. Like the blend between H and C is basically like, what do you get rid of? So I think like the best way to go about it is saying, all right, Reg H plus what? Reg C would be...
But Justin, I'm going to argue for what Reg C would be. What are you going to do to Regulation F? Are you going to do anything to Regulation F? Or should we just, kick that to the curb and just say it would be exactly as it was? Because, I mean, if we can go back to it pretty easily.
If there's ever anything we have to do to a format to make it better, simplest thing to do, to me, like my best case scenario, just ban Dondozo. Like ban Dondozo.
That fixes C too.
High key fixes so many things about a lot of formats.
Okay.
If you don't need to bring a Dozo check, like the amount of team building space that you get is ridiculous.
See, Justin could say like ban Raging Bolt and Urshifu from Reg F, but if he did that, it would feel weird to leave Crown in, and he can't suggest something that gets rid of Crown.
Well, I'm fine with going to Regulation B. Like that's what I'm saying. Like if we go to C, at least give me Crown. But like if we're going to get rid of Crown, then
what about Regulation? what about Regulation F plus being the same, the normal, quote unquote, the national dex format we have, but only Gen 9 sub-legendaries and Paradox Pokemon are legal. So no Landorus, no Urshifu, no Tornadus, no Cresselia or Heatran or whatever. Like, you can only play the Paldean sub-legendaries and Paradoxes.
Which is like a Regulation C, kind of.
So it's giving you Regulation F, it's giving you Paradoxes, giving you legendaries, but,
So that's C+. That's if we have...
But you have Incineroar, you have Rillaboom, you have all the DLC Pokemon.
Well, this is the thing, right?
You don't have the Ogrepons in Regulation C.
I think if we think about Regulation C, if you just imagined Regulation C from 2023 and you dumped Rillaboom and Incineroar into it, and just Rillaboom and Incineroar, I mean, none of the other fun counterplay, but if you think about putting those two into it, it becomes the most disgusting, vile format that anyone has ever played. I mean, it's like, I'm going to switch out my Incineroar, bring in my Rillaboom, my Amoonguss is there, your Chen Pao can't deal enough damage, that's unfortunate, I'm going to heal back up. The Instant Amoonguss Fluttermane core is back, and earlier than ever.
Pieces, and then you do get no extra offense, basically. You get no break,
just add a
wall
bunch
breakers.
of disgusting defense to Regulation C, and it's like, ugh, really? So I would be very nervous about a Regulation C that came back as Regulation C+, where it's just like, okay, we're going to give you the Ruins, the Loyal 3, and Ogrepon. Like, Ogrepon is the only good thing. Ogrepon and Okidogi are the only good things happening to that format, and so much more bad is slowing down the format and making it kind of like hard to work with. It's nice that you have the centralizing presence from the Paradoxes, and maybe that'd be enough. You get the power to break through some of these defenses. Maybe you have, Walking Wake to power up Sun Teams or something like that. But I'd actually be kind of concerned if we brought back C and added in all of the Nat Deck stuff alongside it. Not too concerned. I mean, I'll play anything. I'm a crab, to quote an acquaintance of mine. I'll eat anything. But man, I think it would be way better if we could figure out some way to play a format where the pivot guys were not just like number one or number two best thing to be doing in the format.
I also think that like Reg H is one of the worst offenders of like, it is so badly missing its balancing forces.
There's nothing centralizing about the format. It's like,
like Fluttermane would be amazing in Regulation H if you just dropped it in a vacuum. Like, and you can throw in tons of paradoxes.
80% usage, just to be clear. Like Fluttermane would be 80 to 90% usage if you dropped it in.
You throw Fluttermane into the format that like you can throw all the paradoxes in and only like 5 of them make an impact, really. Maybe 6 if you're adding the DLC paradoxes like Crown, Gouging Fire, Raging Bolt. So yeah, it's weird. I'll never advocate for like taking away some of the tools that we've gotten used to, or like the new moves and stuff. Like, sure, I don't like Scale Shot D-Knight. Sure, I don't like Sneasler, but if you give us the Paradox Balancing Axe, like Sneasler's not as good.
Yeah,
Tusk wipes the entire format. All of the bears, Arch, Ensign.
Tusk is like Flamigo.
But good.
Well, all right. I didn't know I was going to get insulted on this podcast.
No, I love
the ad hominem, buddy.
You
going after me
personally? The personal attacks in the debate have started to come out. All right.
So I'm saying you carried Flamigo to top 4, man.
No, Flamigo carried me.
Hey, he's burnt. That's what
it's way underplayed in H, but that's okay. No one has to believe me.
We have to start getting close to the end here. So our final topic here is we're going to get into Raging Bolt versus Fluttermane. And I'm going to start with Toler here because we talked on Twitter about it and how you even talked about how 73% is not as bad as you think it is because of the different sets. And from the viewer perspective, as Justin said, viewers don't like when Pokemon are that dominant. They don't like when Incineroar is 60% usage. They don't like when Urshifu is 60% usage, right? So why is Fluttermane any different than those other high usage Pokemon that people don't enjoy in formats?
Hey man, I've spent, I've been playing this game since 2008. I've spent 17 years, not quite. I've spent maybe like 13 years saying like, just diverse doesn't mean good. And I know I started with that. So this is a good wrap here. Fluttermane being 73% usage is okay. I'm not going to pander to the spectator here, although I want to, because I think our game is wonderful to watch. I think if you're ready to engage with nuance, if you're ready to say, okay, well, why do they think their Flutter Main is going to outspeed here? Why do they want to take this trade? Why are they willing to expose it this way? It's a Pokemon that has a lot of depth. It's a Pokemon that has a variety of sets. I mean, we've seen everything from support Flutter Main to Spec Flutter Main to Calm Mind Flutter Main. Like, it does all kinds of stuff, but it's not boring. Like, I'm not clicking Parting Shot with my Flutter Main. I'm not clicking Fake Out. I'm not wasting time. I don't have an Enters the Battlefield effect. I'm sitting up my sweeper and I'm trying to knock out all of your guys. Like, that is the thing that Flutter Main is doing, or maybe helping a friend do it. And outside of some toxic interactions with Chiyu, it's a cool Pokemon at doing that. I think sweepers are very replaceable in formats, and Flutter Main being the best special sweeper is, you know, it would just be Golden Go then, or it would just be X other fast special sweeper that would fill that role. Things that really affect the tempo and feel of a format are supporters and utility. And Raging Bolt in Regulation F, while definitely lower usage, and I hope because people realize it wasn't fun, Raging Bolt in Regulation F is wasting a bunch of board time. Spectators are literally like turning off their TVs halfway through a game that's taken twice as long as it should because of leftovers and grassy terrain. And people stop playing it because it's like Thunderclap isn't even reliable. We're all playing guessing games. We're seeing how long you can drag out your HP recovery. The thing is that the play pattern of Raging Bolt, even though it's not as powerful as Flutter Main is in C, Raging Bolt is not as powerful as that in F. The play pattern of Raging Bolt is so much less fun to play against. It's like, you know, it's not quite Bright Powder Sandvale level.
You lose me, Toler.
But it's also not fun to watch.
Okay, but this is where you lose me, because when you say Flutter Main is so diverse in its sets that it's still exciting because it can be 10 different things, you, as a positive, myself as a team builder and playing Regulation C, that was a negative to me, was how centralizing Flutter Main and how many roles it could fill in the same format was denying so many other Pokemon viability because you had to.
Why would I use Sylveon? Because I can just do my turbo bulky Flutter Main instead.
And it's like, and for team building, it's a nightmare. If my team is good into Specs Flutter Main, but not good into Speed Boost or Icy Wind version, and not good into the bulky version versus the SAS version, I think it's very like where if you say Raging Bolt is just Calm Mind and very, like, I think Raging Bolt and Flutter Main are very similar. And like Raging Bolt was not just Calm Mind leftovers, the whole time.
That is a hot take. Late in the format, that's a hot take. Raging Bolt.
I understand, but like we have a whole breadth of an entire format, right?
We did.
I think it's
back to F. We see
Flutter
a
Main
lot of
is
Calm Mind Raging Bolts.
Look, I think that, so you know how some people will get called out for being like chronically online? I think that there's also a different flavor of that called chronically on Showdown. And I think that the people that believe that the majority of the Raging Bolt were all Calm Mind lefties, looking just at this top 8, let's check. We got an AV.
Mm-hmm.
We got 1 Calm Mind lefties.
You know, I think you're really uncovering my secret agenda here. And I
We
don't
got
even
another
know
AV.
if you need to finish this.
We have a booster energy offensive.
That's
Which is
exactly
the
what I'm saying.
problem. The
It's
problem
the
is
exact
no
same
Calm
thing as
Mind.
Flutter Main.
People that
Of the
practice
7
this format,
Raging Bolt that were even in the
only
top
play
16,
Calm Mind Raging
only
Bolt.
1 had Calm Mind.
People on social media are acting like Raging Bolt was Dark Void Smeargle or something. Like it was some height
It's true. It's
of
not as bad
toxic
as
frustration.
people say.
And it's just like, it's just not what reality was. Like Raging Bolt had very varied strategies.
Yeah.
Now, yes, would you go Terra Fairy to beat the other one? You're like, sure, okay. But Flutter Main also beats Flutter Main in the same way Raging Bolt beats Raging Bolt, in the same Miraidon beats Miraidon, in the way that Kangaskhan beat Kangaskhan, and Heatran beat Heatran. Like,
and Urshifu Dark beats Urshifu Dark. Yeah.
There you go. Like that's just how Pokemon works.
Yeah,
80% of the teams in this top 16,
Flutter
80%
still
of the
beats
teams
Flutter Main.
had
Yeah, how high
redirection.
was Flutter Main usage in F too? It wasn't nearly as high, right?
No.
But
It fell off a lot.
It's not because the tools are like even that much more powerful. It's that Urshifu was controlling so much of the format that it's like using Flutter Main was actually a risk because of Tailwind Surging Strikes.
Yeah.
Yeah, huh. Maybe there were other problems in Regulation F that I'm not able to address because we're focusing so much on Raging Bolt that we're not even.
But that's all I was saying. Is
Urshifu mind games.
Yeah, everyone's
I'll leave it. I'm happy to.
Zerndon or something, and it just
definitely
wasn't.
not.
Like, that's why I made that tweet showing the difference in the statistics. Like, I understand not like it's not the full picture, right? And Raging Bolt's more frustrating than Flutter, but like this notion that we were just so Raging Bolt filled for 4 months with no other options, it's just not true.
Yeah, no, I actually agree with you there.
It wasn't that bad.
Argument, I think, reflects that, right? It's like I'm arguing against the play pattern, not against the Pokemon.
Right.
And as Justin's saying, some of that is colored by the fact that I practiced a lot of Regulation F. And when you practiced a lot of Regulation F, there were a lot of people that were thoroughly convinced that Calm Mind Raging Bolt was the best thing. And so we played on Showdown, and there was a period of time, probably like 2 weeks, where every time you queued a match, you had to set aside 30 minutes because that person was going to click protect whether they were able to win or not. That said, I think there are some real problems with Regulation F that aren't Raging Bolt focused. I mean, we're still dealing with Urshifu. We're still dealing with priority mind games. We're still dealing with Incineroar cycling in and out. But I don't think I want to focus on that right now. We don't have a lot of time for it. Just say there are plenty of healthy play patterns in Regulation F. And real talk, I still liked it more than I liked Regulation I. Which was all coin flips and practice doesn't matter.
Hey, that's why it's losing the poll.
You know? I think I can make my closing arguments here. So some of the things that Toler mentioned, the honestness when it existed in Reg C was actually pretty pleasant. I think that was actually what might be missing from Regulation F was because everything was so dishonest. There wasn't a lot of, calms in the storms.
Everything is so strong in F.
So it was very demanding in the builder at times, but I also felt like because the strong stuff was so good, like it never felt like you were as volatile as sometimes really weirdly distributed power curves can make a format feel. Because I just felt like the variations in different archetypes that you're using had enough offense to break pretty much anything. So yeah, the way that you used your Terra could be really punishing. And then how good your team was into the really, really good stuff. I just felt like that it didn't require that much elasticity. Like, okay, I can just fight the Raging Bolt with my Iron Crown. I can fight it with a Terrapin and then, get it with Redirection and Urshifu of my own. I think that a lot of people had trouble with the Raging Bolt format because very often it's like, well, this is the strongest thing. I'm going to use it myself. So a lot of those people were, fighting the same gameplay loop over and over, and they walled each other. So that was not fun for a lot of people to deal with. And then additionally, I think also, the Flutter Mane being super high usage in Regulation C wasn't that big of a deal to me. Like, I understand, we talked about it being bad for spectatorship. Flutter Mane kind of sits in this category of being like a special Landorus Therian. Like, it's a balancing act, like an older Landorus Therian when it actually did provide balance.
It was good. Yeah.
Back when it was good. Incineroar, I think, is like too far into one direction. Maybe Raging Bolt is a little bit overtuned where it's like it does so much so well that you can't use other things to do its job. You really can't ever.
There's not another Calm Mind Pokemon in Regulation F.
Flutter Mane is kind of in that vein, but it feels like it just doesn't eclipse that field. And then, there's balancing acts to all these Pokemon. I feel like Urshifu was probably the most balanced it's ever been by the metagame that it was sitting in Regulation F. Like, one of the most broken Pokemon ever had to deal with Raging Bolt, Wellspring, Rillaboom, Incineroar for its close combat, Tornadus everywhere. Expanding Force users and Hard Trick Room and Dondozo where it can just eat hits from Urshifu if it's bulky enough. There's just a lot of things, in my opinion, that I felt like were really hostile to Urshifu. And even still, it just kind of made it feel like a normal Pokemon to be on your team, which is like weird. But I like that because having like a Pokemon that can very consistently beat like Sash, Chi, and Pow is really cool to me. Because otherwise, like, we don't really have answers to Chi and Pow, and it had Sucker Punch. So like, it was one of those Pokemon that could reverse sweep you with a King Gambit partner or a Dragonite partner very easily. And it always felt like, at any moment, like, you were never really checkmating people. It was just like, it was always a soft check. soft check, here to go. And then as soon as the opponent made some crazy play, they're
they
whipping it
right.
back.
Yep.
And I hate the guess right, get reversed.
I hate guess right Pokemon, and we've done a lot of it, and we had a lot of formats.
The better Joe Ugarte can be in a format, the harder time I have. Like,
well, I don't think he's exclusively guessing right all the time.
No, but like he gets a power up. He gets a power up when that's like a definitive trait in the format. It's love Joe. I'm not really trying to.
He's a really strong
down
calculator, from my understanding. Like he understands how the game is going to go very quickly from position, so I'll give him that credit. But man, he's also good at the 50-50s.
Yeah, so I think the concise summary on the Regulation F thing for me is, yeah, it's a lot of broken stuff, but even the broken stuff felt kind of balanced, and like they just nestled into a pretty well distributed metagame, and didn't feel like too much toxic stuff was very volatile and like prevalent in Regulation F, whereas in Regulation C, felt like a lot of commonly reoccurring game loops revolved around, the chicken with Terra, especially with Chiyu Flutter, with POW and D-Knight. Like Ghost Terra was more common than it's ever been on offensive pieces in a format in Regulation C. That's an intangible. That's something that people probably really don't remember very well. But I remembered it because I hated it. I hated dealing with that and being like, do I play around the Ghost Terra? If I play around the Ghost Terra, do I lose so much momentum into my opponent? And like, yeah, when we weren't dealing with that, sure, it was a great gameplay loop, but that was just Regulation B, which is why I'll always prefer that format in a vacuum. The twist on the format going forward, I think we could try a Regulation H without like, some of the transfer Pokemon, no Urshifu. Just give us Paradoxes back, give us Ogerpon, give us the Loyal 3. I think definitively, so we can maybe get a chance to see something like Okidogi, like have a chance, like, people using Pheasantipity. I mean, they never really had room to breathe. I also am...
they were just dumped into the highest power formats that they could.
A huge Hearthflame girl enjoyer. Like the freaking Hearthflame that's my girl. She hits you with her bonk. You are gone. I love her. So give her a chance to be great again. That's always fun. Mm-hmm. I just feel like a lot of the pieces that were really strong in Regulation F were really fun to use. And that is also kind of like a definitively good thing about a format, in my opinion. If Dondozo and Mouseape are the two strongest things in a format, you're not going to see me until it's over. So,
yeah. Well, also, I mean, the Kitakami legendaries, like they're 550 BST, right, instead of the 600. So, like, it is theoretically they have a quote unquote lower threshold than some of the other legendaries. So, like, they can exist in Reg H plus theoretically.
Yeah, I think just closing up my stuff. Part of the reason I'm voting, or I voted for Regulation C in that Twitter poll, which doesn't really matter. Part of the reason why
this matters.
I would really like to see Scarlet Violet close on a format that is fundamentally a Scarlet Violet format. I don't want this to be a Gen 8 format, which is in Cinderella Ursh was all like any non-restricted format in Generation 8. Those were key pieces. I don't want it to be a Gen 8 format. I don't really want it to be, some like weird Amoonguss Arcanine format even that badly. Like, I mean, it's fine. It's something that happens in Regulation C, but I really want to see some of the pieces that were presented in Scarlet and Violet thrive. And so I don't think Regulation C plus would necessarily be the right format, although Paradox would be good. I don't think Regulation F is the right format. But there's something there that's not, we're going to deal with Instant Rillaboom and Urshifu over and over again. That's beautiful and it's waiting to happen. And I hope that that's what we end up playing in that little span of time where I will be working at my dissertation defense and not talking to anyone.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, both. You've made compelling arguments for each of your sides, and everybody. Now, it's not up to me. It's up to the listeners. It's up to the viewers to determine. Let's know in the comments.
The Pokemon employee listening to this
podcast. Oh, fingers crossed. Yeah.
Please ban Incineroar. Oh.
Are we team Regulation C, team Regulation F? If it were up to me, I would just decide, you know what? C, F. Let's just go right down in the middle. Make sure nobody's happy. Regulation D for no reason. Nobody's happy.
But Incineroar, but yes, Urshifu.
Yes, that's the next format. Spoilers.
Objection.
Lee Provost, what are you doing here?
Joe Brown, my man, how are you doing? I had to interject. This is a hot topic. We need to talk about it. Regulation F, Regulation C, but we're forgetting the pinnacle of the regulations we've had in the Scarlet and Violet era, and that is Regulation A.
Regulation A? Are you saying that should be the next format?
It has to be the one. It has to be. Look back. We started off, Scarlet and Violet came around, everyone was excited, we had all these new Paldean Pokemon, but we only got 2 regionals with this format, right? So we didn't have any time to play in the sandbox. Let's go around this barbecue one more time, come back to it. We've got the DLCs now, we've got new TMs for all of these Paldean Pokemon we can innovate with. This is going to be like a soft expansion of Regulation A, and everyone looks back fondly. Who doesn't want Palmot Revival Blessing? Who doesn't want a Murkrow winning a regional? We had Mimikyu in top 8 twice in San Diego. Come on. Paldean Tauros everywhere. We love it. Meowscarada. I mean, the list goes on. We don't need Fluttermane. We don't need to go back to Raging Ball. We need Regulation A. And Sierra, I'm sorry. We don't need Slitherwing back anymore. We just need to just put it to the side. It's great. But we've had our time with it. Had its spotlight for that brief moment. Regulation A is where we need to be. And I'm sure you, Joel, being an appreciator of these Paldean Pokemon, would support this. Come on, let's get the ball rolling with Regulation A.
Hey, you know, I could be swayed as the neutral observer here. Armarouge was pretty good in Regulation A, right? So
yeah.
What do you say as the Regulation A defender, Lee, about the concerns about the variety in the metagame? You know, there were Dondozos and, you know, the Garganacles stalling around, Glamora with toxic spikes. What say you to those Regulation A deniers?
The deniers need to wake up and realize we've had 3 years in Scarlet and Violet now. We know how to deal with these Pokemon. We didn't at the time. They were new. We kind of were just swamped by their like power, their ferocity, and I think now we know how to deal with Dondozo Tatsugiri. It's not as scary as it once was. Garganacle as well. Where's that been since Regulation A? We know how to deal with it. It's fine. They're good tools, but there are other tools out there that we can utilize to get around these Pokemon, beat them down, pick new Pokemon that can come to the floor. And with the innovation that we've got in the player base, it's going to be no problem. And things like Mimikyu, things like Murkrow, things like Bolingo are going to have a great time once again. So that's what I would say. Don't worry about these big powerhouse Pokemon that we maybe had issues with at the start, Regulation A. They're not going to be a problem anymore. They might be around here and there, but I believe the player base can deal with these threats and come out on top.
I'm excited to hear this Regulation A argument, because if you look on social media, I think the most common other answer in the poll was Regulation A. So I think you're not alone on this coalition to get Regulation A to be the next format, Lee.
I'm a man of the people. This is why I had to interject, Joe Brown. I had to come, had to have your back, had to have the people's back and give Regulation A the time it needed on the floor. So here we are. And I really believe, I think we go full circle, right? We end off where we started, and it's the perfect ending for Scarlet and Violet, if it is the last format we get.
I think that's a great argument, Lee. So now it's up to everybody watching here. Let us know your choice for the next regulation for VGC. Regulation A for Lee, Regulation F for Justin, or Regulation C for Toler. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you, Lee, stopping everyone in his tracks to make us remember the good old days of Regulation A. And we will see you in our next format.